We've all at one point or another dreamed of what a Pokemon game on PC could look like. Well, dream no more, as Temtem is exactly the game to bring that to life. This delightful little MMO is available in early access on Steam and will have you exploring a bold new world, catching all sorts of creatures, battling them out with other trainers and more. But you can't just dive straight into this new game without a few little helpful tips, so here are 5 things that you need to know to get you started in Temtem. Just like in all the Pokemon games, the first thing you'll be tasked with is picking which adorable little bugger you want to start your wild Temtem journey with. Professor Constantinos will ask you to pick one of 3 starter Temtem, and each one has varying pros and cons, so here's a quick breakdown of them. First up, we have Crystal, who, as the name might suggest, is a crystal type Temtem. While this cute Temtem has a high defense, attack and HP stats, it is lacking in speed and has poor stamina, so it's not the most agile of creatures. With that said, it's worth bearing in mind that crystal type Temtems are pretty rare in the early game, so it might be worth picking this one to get the upper hand, especially with how Crystal can resist damage from electric, mental and toxic attacks and has moves that are good against electric and mental Temtem. If crystal type Temtem isn't really the kind of thing you want to start off with, then perhaps Hoochik the mental type might be a little more down your alley. Its pros include having the most damaging starting move, Psywave, and having the ability to put targets to sleep. Unfortunately, when it comes to the cons, Hoochik does have pretty low health, attack and defense stats and is weak to electric, digital and crystal attacks, so you'll need to be extra mindful about the foes you go up against. If you're not too fussed about the rarity of crystal type and mental type Temtem, then perhaps Smazy the melee type is exactly what you're after. Smazy has some solid high speed and attack stats along with many high priority techniques for quick attacks, some which are particularly good against earth and crystal Temtem. The real big con here though is that melee type Temtems are pretty common in the early game compared to the other 2 starter types. But that's pretty much a quick easy breakdown of each Temtem, so now it's just down to you in deciding which one would particularly suit your needs, or you can go down the complete wildcard route and pick the Temtem that you simply think looks the best. After you've picked which lovable little Temtem you want to start your journey with, it's now time to learn just some of the basics of looking after it when you fall into those battles in this mad world. There's one stat in particular that you'll want to keep a sharp eye on with your Temtem when battling, and that's its stamina. This basically functions as a pool of energy that your Temtem draws from to do all sorts. It's represented by a small blue meter just under the health bar. The more powerful the technique/attacks you use, the more of the meter gets depleted, but the good news is that after each turn you do get a small amount of stamina back. On top of that, during your turn, you also have the option to put your Temtem to rest to restore a hefty amount of its stamina so that it can keep on battling on. The only thing with this is that this essentially means you're skipping a turn to attack, but at least come your next turn you'll be able to throw a stronger punch. Being able to use more powerful attacks isn't the only reason why you want to keep an eye on the stamina bar. If ignored, then your Temtem will become overexerted, meaning that the attacks you use will also start inflicting damage on your own Temtem. Now if you're a bit of a monster, then you can keep ignoring all that and just let its health deplete, but eventually your Temtem will be forced to rest on its next turn. While it's not the best of tactics, it's certainly a tactic, but maybe just be a good trainer and properly look after your Temtem during battles. A little bit of love and affection goes a long way. Now down the line you'll find you've caught yourself a nice mixed bag of Temtem, and perhaps you might want to take a little break and start attempting to breed them to create an all new almighty Temtem to destroy your opponents with. In order to breed them, you'll first want to find yourself a breeding center, which will let you put together 2 compatible Temtem so that they can have a lovely little breeding sesh and pop out a whole new magical egg. At the moment there's only one breeding center in the game, which you'll find just after leaving Nanga and going into the volcanic Omninesia Islands located on the Canopath/Route 5. Inside there you'll find a large open green space with a bunch of Temtem just chilling and roaming around. To the left you'll find the Temtem breeder, who is exactly the person you need to get your Temtem breeding on. Before you throw 2 random Temtems at the breeder to smush together to create a whole new magical creature, you first need to make sure that they're compatible by meeting a few conditions. They must share a type, be different genders, and both be fertile so you can breed them. As a bonus, if you put 2 that are of the same evolutionary line, then you'll actually speed up the process a little. After all that, the Temtem breeder will do his little Temtem breeding thing, and soon enough you'll get your hands on a whole new egg. Usually you'd have to wait around 25 minutes for the breeder to get the egg ready, or if it's part of the same evolutionary line then you only have to wait 15 minutes. After that time passes, all you gotta do is head back to the breeder and collect the egg so that you can hatch it and bring into the world a whole new Temtem. In order to start the hatching process for the egg, you just need to place it in an empty spot on your squad and wait another 45 minutes of real time for it to finally hatch, although this kind of depends on what Temtem is currently residing in the egg, so it could be quicker. 45 minutes later, give or take, and your Temtem will finally be birthed, and you'll find that it has some shared qualities from the two original Temtems that you put together. All that's left to say now is congratulations, because you're now a proud parent of a new Temtem. Now you can just go off and have some more adventures. So you've picked your starter Temtem, had some adventures, and even bred some Temtem to become the very best. It's now time to learn how to get those nice shiny Luma Temtem, which are gifted with even better stats. Luma Temtem are basically special shiny and glowy versions of Temtem. What makes them so special is that they have boosted single values, core stats like speed, attack and so on. Temtem generally all have single values between 1 to 50 for their stats, but 3 of those stats for Lumas will randomly be at 50, which is a perfect score and therefore means that they're quite a bit more powerful than the other Temtem. With that said, it also means that they're pretty tough to catch. Nevertheless, it can be done. All you need to do is go out into the wild to the airborne archipelago and try to encounter as many Temtem as you can. You'll have a 1 in 6,000 chance of finding one in the wild, so it might take some time, but you'll eventually come across one. Once you do come across one, then you just need to get battling and weaken it so that you can attempt to catch it. Just be sure to use one of your best Temtem on it, then you'll have a good chance of bringing one down for you to take home and tame. Alternatively, you could always just breed a Luma Temtem. The odds for getting a Luma Temtem from breeding together 2 regular Temtem are the same as trying to find one in the wild, so it's basically just as tough. But if you already have a Luma, then breeding this with a non-Luma boosts the odds of getting another Luma up to 1 in 600. If you're somehow the luckiest person in the world and already have 2 Luma, then breeding them together increases the odds even further to 1 in 60. So, with all that new knowledge, here's what you want to do. Firstly, you want to attempt to catch your first Luma in the wild. Then, after that, you'll just want to attempt to breed that to get another one as the odds are higher. And eventually after that, you'll want to breed both those 2 new Luma Temtems you got to get a third, and then you'll truly be the best like no one ever was. Easy stuff. Now you're probably feeling like a bit of a hotshot at this point, right? You've learned how to catch some Luma Temtem, even how to breed them, but this is just the start of it. Now it's time to see if you've got what it takes to be a Temtem master by catching one of the most powerful creatures, Nessla, a water/electric type with some pretty strong and solid moves. You'll be able to find this rare Temtem in 2 locations, the first being the Thalassian Cliffs south of Erisola in the waterpool, and the second is the Solara River east of the starting town Xandar. The thing is, it's super uncommon to actually come across it in either of locations. In fact, there's a 5% chance of it appearing when a battle starts, so it's a bit of a tough one to track down, especially as you'll also need a surfboard to cross the water. As for how to actually catch it, if you're successful in finding one, it will likely be between levels 15 and 20, so you'll want to make sure you've got a pretty strong Temtem with you to at least match it. Nature type Temtems tend to be the best against water, electric and normal types, so that's your best chance of besting Nessla. As soon as you manage to drop its health to less than half, then start throwing out those Tem cards to attempt to catch it. If you have a Temtem that can hypnotize, then use them to put Nessla to sleep, as this will give you a better chance of actually catching it. This won't be an easy task and you may end up running out of cards, but trust us when we say that catching Nessla will be well worth it. And that's pretty much the 5 things you need to know to get you started on your own little Temtem adventure. Now you can become the best like no one ever was.